Hi, this is Rapha again with this continuing series on nighttime stories about the restoration of YAshrAEl and of Almighty YAH's work. And there are so many things that took place back in between 2000 and today that need to be told and need to be put down in, I think, the Hall of Fame in the restoration of YAshrAEl, the 49th actually restoration. And so I want to tell you one of those stories that is an amazing story. It happened in 2007. It was a time when we were already adopting homeless boys into our Yehuda camps, and we had thousands of boys already. As fast as we adopt the boys, Yahuwah would bring women to come and take care of those kids, and we had a steady stream of men that were converting to become Yehuda, seed of Abraham from various nations and places. We had them come from as far away as South Africa and Japan and Korea and Russia. A few actually came from Europe. But most of the men that came were from the Middle East or from Africa. And in one of those particular instances, we had been building a camp that was about would hold about 500 to 600 people, about an average size camp. And we would buy land usually ahead of time. We would own the surrounding agricultural land. We usually try to get water rights and at least some land that we could grow something on. Well, in Afghanistan, there isn't much land there that's arable. That is, that you can grow crops on. It's very highly sought after, and it's usually in the bottoms of the mountains where a stream runs through. But in this particular case, we had found quite miraculously, if you would, that an underground stream had come very close to the surface of this little plateau that had no water to it, but it was up high a bit, and we had discovered it by being exhausted as we actually had gone to an Al-Qaeda camp that had stolen some of our boys. Our boys were all trained on what to do if they were kidnapped by Al-Qaeda and how to go along with things, just make sure they stay alive. And then when they are in the camp, that they go and they try to find out which boys are dissatisfied with Al-Qaeda's philosophy and their cold, cruel, violent ways. And then they would start teaching them about Yahuwah, the great God of creation and the God of all of us, that whose name has been lost for hundreds of years until just recently. So we had stopped because we had exhausted in this plateau, and there was a little cave indention in the back of this plateau that we had laid down for protection in the night. And one of the young boys there, as we laid down, we thought everyone was asleep, and he suddenly pops up and he says, "Baba, Rapha," he says, "there's water here." He had heard water rushing through the rock that he had put his ear to. And we simply didn't believe him. But we went over and listened to, and sure enough, you could hear running water beneath those rocks. So very excitedly, we always carried our machetes with us, and Those were good digging instruments too, and we pried out some of the rocks and dug a hole down there. Water started seeping through. We dug a little deeper, and all of a sudden it just like a gusher started flowing out. Well, it was quite an amazing thing to see all this water flowing out onto this plateau. So we quickly went and found the people that owned it, and the tribe that owned it didn't care about it much, and we made a deal to buy that plateau. We knew that that Yahuwah had provided for us. We'd actually stuck some rocks back on the flow of it so that it wouldn't give itself away before we had a chance to buy it. And we've debated for a while whether that was ethical or not, but we believe since we found it that our Father had that for us. And so we bought the whole plateau and the area around it. And of course, then we went and got a sizable number of our warriors and of the women and of the kids. And we came up and we built a village on that plateau. And then we unleashed the water and we began to irrigate the fields all around us. And it became quite a amazing development. See, in the midst of that stark mountainside, that here this beautiful green land and crops, and grains started coming up, and it would grow. It really grows almost everything there in the lower regions like this was. If you have water, water is the big key. Well, word got back to Al Qaeda, and they decided, that no, they wanted that land. And by the way, they also had found out who had stolen their kids, their new recruits for their army. And of course, it wasn't any surprise to them because we were always fighting over kids back and forth. And Al Qaeda hated us. And so they brought a rather large group of their soldiers and very well armed. And they started a siege against our town. Now, our town had followed the name. Each one of our towns has a different name. And they had decided to call this entire town by a very special name named BakUWr. BakUWr really means first fruits, because it was the first town we had that had good running water like this, pure water, and fields around it. It was like an ideal situation, and we had sunshine year round. It was really a delightful place, beautiful view. And so we called it BakUWr, first fruits. Really, first fruits of Yahoo. And when Al Qaeda came with this, they had a huge army. It must have been about 7,000, we estimated, warriors that they had brought, enough to circle the whole town, and they began to shoot at us with all kind of weapons. And we had fortified BakUWr, and we'd put up rocks around the edges and big boulders. And we knew they probably were going to try something like this at some point. We were surprised that they came at us so ferociously so early. And we'd never had a time where they had that much armament. You understand, there was about 500 of us. That was including the kids, the women, and among us warriors that were there, there was only about 30, I think there was 38 of us, warriors to defend against 7,000. And we knew that unless we had some kind of help from outside, that it was not going to be a happy outcome. Well, it went on for days. The siege went on. And we lost a few of our good brothers. We had over 15 more that were wounded, and it was getting down where we were getting in a pretty desperate situation. And you could tell that Al Qaeda was planning an assault on us, and they were probably going to overrun us. And so we had a meeting together. And there was this young man, and his wife is really his lovey, since the Yehuda don't really marry. They pledge their love to a woman, and she to him. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And he stood up and he said to us that he had been praying and listening to the Father, and that there would be a great cloud that would come and would rescue us. A cloud. And it seemed a little fairyland to me, Disneyland type. And so, being the brilliant missionary that I am, I got up and said to him, thank you for your optimism, but tomorrow we're going to probably be overrun, and we need to spend this time training the kids, because they won't kill the kids. They'll probably kill all of us. And it was no big thing for us to lose our lives, because every Yehuda over there knew that it's just a matter of time before probably Al Qaeda would kill them. So we lived life daily, expecting that to be our last day. They wouldn't kill the kids because they wanted them to take them into their suicide schools and to make toy soldiers out of them. Well, I so regret saying that to this young man, this young Yehuda, because the next morning we heard his voice as he was singing songs to Yahuwah and marching towards their lines. And amazingly, he didn't have any gun. He didn't have a gun on him. He was one of our warriors, but he was the youngest of us all. And immediately I yelled at him, "Please come back, that you're going to be killed." And he turned back and he said in his language, in Pashtun, they cannot kill one who's going to live forever. What a great statement. They cannot kill one who is going to live forever. And the Yehuda of YAshrAEl will live forever. They continued to walk towards their lines. We couldn't tell exactly what happened, except that there was some talk, and they appeared to be getting ready to torture him to get some information out of him. When through our binoculars we could see that he grabbed one of the radio phones there while they weren't really watching him closely, changed the dial, spoke into the phone, and then they turned, saw what he'd done, and they filled his body full of bullets. "35 minutes later, over the mountain, I heard the familiar whir of American helicopters. He had radioed on their emergency channel. They were able to triangulate where the signal came from. And over the mountain came a cloud of Apache helicopters coming to rescue. It's an amazing sight to see those warplanes in action. It looked like liquid fire coming out of their 30 and even 50 caliber guns as they simply destroyed Al-Qaeda. And I think many days about the sacrifice that young man made so that we might live. How that being a young man in love, our code is that the old warriors are the ones that protect the young. If he had shared that with me, I would have gone down and tried to do what he did. But being a pure yachty, he loved his elders. I actually had the privilege of leading him through faith in Yahuwah and through the covenant of love. In my mind, he is in the Hall of Fame of those who would give themselves for others. He had 2 children, 2 boys, and I've adopted them as part of my grandchildren. And we've told them the story. They know it by heart of how their father saved 500 Yehuda in that marvelous place called BakUWr. And if you go there today, you'll find that there, even though we don't usually build statues, but there is a large metal statue that we have forged. And the sides of it are well worn with those who've gone and hugged the statue of him, remembering his story. His story is written on the plaque beneath. I can't go there without weeping. But it's a symbol of love. And it's a symbol of hope. That any nation can be changed. You go there today, and it's a place where homeless boys are brought, and they're given a new life. All because of GloriYA. I hope it's been a good story for you. This is Rapha. Blessings.